The scripture says, give no place to the enemy. Strife can't just come in when it wants, bring division, disharmony, tear relationships apart. We have to open the door. And I'm not saying that we should never have an argument, never say a wrong word. That's not reality. But when it comes a part of who we are, it becomes common. We're constantly arguing, fighting, being disrespectful. That means we've gone way too far. And Jesus said in Mark chapter 3, a home filled with strife and division destroys itself. If you allow the spirit of strife in, it'll tear apart relationships, tear apart your marriage, your family. I've seen lifelong friendships destroyed over one disagreement. That's strife doing what it does best. Well, you said, Joel, I wouldn't get so upset if my coworker wouldn't be disrespectful to me. I wouldn't argue if my spouse wouldn't push my buttons. That's why we fight all the time. No, you have to be the bigger person. Just because somebody is doing wrong doesn't mean you have to engage. That's the spirit of strife baiting you, saying, come on, let me in, argue, fight, be disrespectful. Don't take the bait. It takes a mature person to overlook an offense and say, no, I'm not taking that bait. I'm staying in peace. It takes maturity to apologize even when it wasn't your fault. If you're going to keep strife out, you have to get good at walking away when everything in you says to let them have it. There will be times when you know you're right. The other person is being disrespectful. They're not telling the truth, but for the sake of peace, you let it go. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. He didn't say, blessed are the people who are right. Sometimes you have to let the other person think they're right, even when you know they're wrong. We think, well, if I'm right, I'm not going to back down. I'm going to prove to them that I'm right. I'm going to win this battle. Can I tell you, being right is overrated. You can be right and be miserable. You can be right and sleep on the couch. You can be right your whole life and have nobody at your funeral. You can prove your point, always win the battle, but you don't realize it's damaging your relationships. Victoria and I don't always agree. One of my strengths is I won't argue. Things start to get a little heated, I walk away. It takes two people to fight. You don't have to engage. I would rather have peace than have my way. I would rather have a loving, kind, fun atmosphere in my home than to win the battle but be so miserable I don't want to be there. I've learned if you'll let God do it His way, He'll change what needs to be changed. God is the potter. We can't change people. Only God can. These are tests that we must pass. Will you stay on the high road and bite your tongue even when you feel like telling somebody off? Will you put your ego down and let somebody else be right even when you know they're wrong? The scripture says, one can chase 1,000, but two can put 10,000 to flight. When you're in unity, the favor on your life is increased. You are 10 times more powerful when you're in agreement. This means you have 10 times the strength to withstand attacks, to overcome obstacles. You can accomplish dreams 10 times bigger, 10 times more rewarding. You will go so much further if you will keep unity in your home. And some of the obstacles you can't seem to overcome, the doors that are not opening, it may be because you're operating with the strength of one. There's strife and division. You need the 10 times power to reach the fullness of your destiny. And that person God put in your life is not just there for companionship. There is a spiritual force released when you live in peace and harmony. When Victoria and I first got married, like all couples, we had to work through some things. The scripture says, the two shall become one. You don't become overnight. It takes some time. 28 years later, I'm still training her. She's still training me. But we made a decision early on in our relationship that we were going to keep strife out of our home. It didn't happen automatically. We're two different people, have two different ways of doing things. We had to grow together, make allowances, overlook some things. Had we not stayed on the offensive and worked to keep strife out, not only would we not still be together, but we wouldn't be where we are. When we were believing for this place, the former Compaq Center, it was going to take more than just my faith. I needed that 10 times power. This dream was so big, the only way it could be accomplished is for somebody else to come into agreement. It says in Psalms, where there's unity, there is a commanded blessing on your life. That's when you'll accomplish things that you could not accomplish on your own. If we realized what we were giving up by allowing all these petty things to tear us apart, strife, discord, being at odds with each other, if we really saw how that was holding us back, we would work overtime to keep peace in our life. God has big things in your future, but it's going to take more than just your faith. You're going to need the 10 times power that comes from having unity in your home. Think about what your children can accomplish when you are in agreement with your spouse. 10 times the influence, 10 times creativity, 10 times the power. This is one of the things that holds us back. It's not our lack of talent, education, the background we come from. It's the fact that we're operating on 1/10 the power. What would happen if you would draw the line in the sand and say, that's it. From this day forward, I'm keeping strife out of my life. No more arguing, no more petty fights, no more saying disrespectful things. I'm staying on the high road. I'm not allowing division, discord, tension in my home. I'm going to be a peacemaker. When you do that, God will release the 10 times power, favor, increase, blessing like you've never seen. Well, Joel, if I don't stand up for myself, if I don't tell people what I think, that's going to make me look weak. It's just the opposite. When you go the extra mile to keep strife out of your home, that's not being weak, that's a sign of strength. The most mature person is the one that walks away from the argument. The most mature person is not always the one that's right. It's the one that keeps the peace. And you know what arguing and having to be right really boils down to? Pride. I'm not going to let them get the best of me. You have to put your ego down and say, I'd rather have peace in my life. I would rather have the 10 times blessing than just being right. This couple I know had been trying to have a baby for many years with no success. The lady took the infertility treatments. They were praying, believing, doing everything they could, but still no child. One day the man was flying home from India. He's a minister. He'd been over there teaching the people. He was very discouraged, sitting on the flight all alone. He said under his breath, God, it's not fair. I'm over here doing what you've asked me to do. Why won't you give us a baby? God, I don't understand why we can't have a child. God said something back to him, not out loud, but in his spirit. He said, son, you're not going to have a baby until you start treating your wife better. And he was a good man. He loved the Lord. When you see him out in public, they seemed as happy as can be. But deep down, he knew he wasn't treating his wife the way he should be. It wasn't anything big, just little things. He had become disrespectful, saying things that he knew he shouldn't say, become argumentative, where he used to overlook things, let it go, now he'd keep it stirred up. He'd become hard to get along with, unfriendly, not putting any effort into the relationship. The good news is he was willing to change. He took it to heart. He made the adjustments. A couple of years later, his wife gave birth to a beautiful baby daughter. Maybe like my friend, you know you're not being your best in this area. You've drifted down the wrong path. God is not here to condemn us, to make us feel bad about ourselves, but He will convict us and challenge us to come up higher. Condemnation pushes us down. Conviction is there to push us up. But we have to do like my friend and say, okay, I'm willing to change. I can make some adjustments. Now don't sit here and think, boy, I wish my husband would have come today. He really needs this. No, God has the right people here. Don't ask how God can change somebody else. Look inside and say, God, how can I change? How can I get along better with people?